Good evening, YouTube. This is Carter Machiavelli here again. Today's topic China, or should I say it in the Donald Trump impression? China, China. I can't do it, whatever. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about is, which is probably going to be the topic of upcoming videos, so it gets a little collection of videos, is the goal of China to destabilize the West economically so that China can rise up to the world's biggest economic superpower. Now, in order to understand what China is doing and why China is doing what they are doing, we need to understand the 2050 or the 2049 goal of China. So, the 2049 goal of China is the goal for the 100th anniversary, the 100-year anniversary for the founding of the People's Republic of China. And so, once they reach the magic number 100, once the People's Republic of China is 100 years old, the Chinese government wants China to be transformed into the world's biggest superpower, into the world's biggest economic superpower. And this is done by any means necessary. One of these topics I want to talk about today is the use of illicit substances, the manufacturing and exporting of illicit substances. So, the main goal, one of the main strategies, except for transforming China into this whole workaholic nation, which probably many of the people there aren't even workaholics, but they are forced to be, right? So, this is one of the strategies, of course, like transforming the own country into this whole producing superpower, whole manufacturing superpower. But the other, of course, is to slow their enemies down, slow the West down. And especially the slowing the West down, destabilizing the West, is necessary for them to grow, because the West also has a large potential to grow. And one of the things China has done over the past 20 years is, apart like from espionage right now, like hacking into systems, spionaging on Western companies like Lockheed Martin and so on, which happened like, I don't know, 15 to 20 years ago. One other thing that China has done is repeatedly produced a huge amount of illicit drugs, which they trade with drug dealers all around the world, so that drug dealers can import this stuff and sell it on the streets. Let me give you a few examples. First of all, alpha PVP, alpha PHP, and so on, which are commonly referred to as bath salts. You see, the original term bath salts was referring to the drug called MDPV, which in and of itself was already dangerous enough, but it was still kind of limited to that. And so once MDPV became illegal and got on the scheduled substances list, China began tweaking on the chemical substance, on the chemical structure of the drug, and began producing other variants of the drug called alpha PVP, alpha PHP. So basically, they produced the designer drugs of bath salts. And what this led to back in, I don't know, 2008, 2013, is people going batshit on it. Of course, this didn't really work that well because it had shocking effects. It was seen on the news articles and so on, people doing too much of it and then started eating people alive, eating homeless people alive, and also not reacting by any means when getting tased by police officers. And so this, of course, this was too obvious for China. So this didn't have the effect they actually wanted to have. So this didn't have the actual reach of people they wanted to have. So they started mass producing fentanyl and also synthetic cannabinoids. So fentanyl is there and synthetic cannabinoids are there. And so what happened, let's go over with the synthetic cannabinoids first, because it's like one of the drugs with the highest reach. Now here in Germany we had a pretty high amount of synthetic cannabinoids a couple of years ago circulating around the country and also having it infected in our local cannabis sources. And this had the pretty severe effect of people getting hooked on it like on crack. That's why they call it green crack here in Germany. And also of people like getting dumber and dumber and people basically being hooked on synthetic cannabinoids. Also they use these synthetic cannabinoids to sell CBD oil, which goes into like vaping machines. And similar stuff. So the reason that China does this, or the reason it was so successful and it was especially profitable for China, is because when this shit hit like America in the forms of K2 or other designer weed, designer spice drugs, people knew just from sheer examples that this stuff can be brutal, but for some reason or for due to some way, criminals started spraying less amounts of synthetic cannabinoids, so a very minor amount of synthetic cannabinoids on their cannabis plants, on their cannabis earnings, and started selling it. And the whole cannabis market became a huge boom through that. And of course, once something gets legal, like say one synthetic cannabinoid gets legal, like let's say one pinaca, right? It gets illegal, then China is ready to tweak out the next synthetic cannabinoid by making small chemical structures on the synthetic cannabinoid to make it legal again. Now Germany has made this is one of the few regulatory decisions I really respect about Germany, because that was a genius chess move. It was prohibiting drugs, drug categories in general, instead of keeping a list of scheduled substances, which was already getting like as long as a fucking dictionary, like having 800 chemical substances in it and having to add new substances to that like every month or something. By keeping a categorized list of substances that are illegal and prohibited, they don't have to do that work anymore of discovering new substances, analyzing their chemical structure, and implementing that in the scheduled substances list. However, this has only happened in Germany. I'm not sure, because I'm pretty sure this hasn't happened in the US, which makes importing illicit substances from China still as easy as it was before, because at the end of the day, it gets imported as some kind of, I don't know, cleaning product or whatever the fuck. And the border patrol, they won't look into that. The customs won't look into that, not the border patrol. So now the next thing, which I'm going to talk about, is the third category, which is opiates or opioids. And so one of these is fentanyl. And one of the reasons America has suffered such a huge fentanyl crisis is because fentanyl got imported a shit ton from China. And you don't need a doctor's license or a medical license or something to import fentanyl from China. You can just import it pretty normally. You just chat someone up on Telegram, a Chinese person, make your order, and it gets shipped. And I'm pretty sure if you look at San Francisco, you will see what the effects of fentanyl has made on society there. Especially, like, not even only San Francisco, generally the California area, it is famously known for being the greatest fall off of a United States state since the history of the United States. Now, a couple of months ago, like maybe a half a year ago or something, one of the very, I would say, decently good maneuvers that the US government has made was pushing China into prohibiting the manufacturing of fentanyl, which worked. Now, the manufacturing and exporting of fentanyl in China is prohibited by law, by Chinese law. However, that didn't stop them from producing opiates. And this is where the shocker comes in. Recently, like a half a year ago or something, a new opiate substance, which is, I believe, 5 times or 6 times stronger than fentanyl, has been discovered, called nitazines. And they lace everything with it. MDMA gets laced with it. There were 2 cases in Australia where people have died from laced MDMA with nitazines. And usually MDMA is laced with opiates in order to give it a small down. So that means if you ingest MDMA, you have to imagine that the pill of MDMA is dissolved by your stomach acid from the outside in. And if you have a small dose of opiates on the outside of the pill, it leads to you getting a small downing effect, a little downing effect, and after that getting the high from the MDMA, the stimulant effect of the MDMA. And this contrast of having the downer effect first and having the upper effect after gives you the illusion of having a bigger kick, which apparently, or as it seems, increases the buying rate of MDMA. Now, enough of that fun fact. So, what happened in Australia was that some idiot dealers laced the MDMA with nitazines and people died from it. What happens in the UK is that nitazines are spreading there, and heroin addicts die from heroin laced with nitazines because, of course, for a heroin addict, the high needs to get stronger and stronger in order to fulfill their tolerance measures. And if it's too strong, like in the case of nitazines, they will fall like flies. And so, since fentanyl has been banned, suddenly, all across Europe and also partly across America, there have been numerous reports found of nitazines being found in heroin supplies, MDMA supplies, other supplies, which of course is not a coincidence, right? If you want to destabilize the West, give them drugs. Give them dangerous drugs so people have no control over themselves anymore. And of course, this is a danger that keeps coming, and where the US government should be able to know this information and should do something against it. And even though I shouldn't talk about this whole situation, about this whole problem, I believe that it is time for me to expose this information that has been hidden behind the curtains for such a long amount of time, in order to raise a little bit of awareness about what's happening here and why people are dying for actually no really reason. It's at the end of the day China's way to raise problems in the West, to raise issues in the West, to simply destabilize the West in order to gain their own economic power, to eventually reach the goal of becoming the world's biggest economic power by 2049. Thank you for watching.